Got it. Zoom.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to another deep history episode with Danger Zone and Raddad 2023. Guys, we got a hell of an episode today. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, we're back. Yeah, there we go. We're back. We've had delays. We've had BS. But you know what? We're going to get history on your butts. If there was okay, look, record scratch on this music. That's not working for me. I need I need something exciting because I think that this has often gotten the the bad end of the stick when it comes to wars. Like as far as is how people perceive this thing, because I think it's pretty intense. Like it's that it to me it's important to some people. We'll say the Canadians when it comes to their sovereignty. To the Brits and the Americans, though, I don't think it's a big fun, happy, fun time.
No,
What do you say?
You're exactly right. Yeah, this is going into this episode. This war meant much more to Canadians than it did to, I think, Americans and the British. British couldn't really be bothered. They were busy with Napoleon, but the Americans, yeah. Go ahead.
But I do want to say one thing though.
Go
Let's
ahead.
paint it. It's a
Paint it.
theatrical trailer of the War of 1812. The White House is on flames. In flames. The British are coming. The British are coming. Triumphant cannon. Blast. Oh, my guts. Oh no, it's just an incurable disease. I'm shitting everywhere. Oh, I took a soft bullet to the face. Somebody patch me up. Dolly Madison runs as James Madison trips because he's got bad vision. Meanwhile, a lawyer, sits in a harbor, decides as he sees an American flag to pen the Star-Spangled Banner. His name is, what was his name again?
Francis Scott Key, man. What the fuck? What are you doing?
I'm sorry. I'm trying. Canada. It's North, man. They dream of donuts and coffee and hockey. Meanwhile, we got a thing to say to Britain. They're busy fighting the Napoleonic Wars, and that's enough of a backdrop to get my history mind warm and ready. But you know what? War is on the horizon because trade is an issue. Look, as it stands at the time, after 1803, when we had the Louisiana Purchase, our population had basically doubled. 36 years post-Rev War One, and at this point, the British had taken like 4,500 ships. That's not a small feat. I mean, literally, they would come on there, and we're talking pirate age here. These guys are just like, blah, 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 blah. This is my boat. And the British would come on there and be like, well, yeah, you're going to serve a different master now.
Are you
and if
calling
they
the
said
British
something,
pirates? Is that what we're doing?
No, the British were the real pirates here. British sea power was no joke. Anyway, that was my trailer. I just wanted to paint it. I mean, there's some other things we'll get into.
Are you
And
good
I
and
love the
ready?
British now. I'm warm and ready, and hopefully the listeners are too. And you can see us on the YouTubes. I got my Zelda shirt on. Adam's representing Genesee. Fear and Ale.
I try to wear a shirt that's relevant to the podcast. So, given that much of the War of 1812 took place around like Niagara Falls, Buffalo, St. Lawrence, all fucking New York, and a lot of Michigan.
True.
Genesee Brewing Company is in Rochester, so it's pretty close. I didn't have anything to wear other than this. This was the closest I got. So,
And I represent the theatrical music playing in the background of an epic, say, like Zelda, trying to raise the bar on the War of 1812. Or as my main source in the book I would recommend for this, book by a man named Don Hickey, who wrote a book called War of 1812, The Forgotten War. Doesn't need to be the Forgotten War, though. You guys need to learn. When we eventually cover the Civil War, this is kind of a connective tissue and also a sister episode to the Napoleon episode. Because if the whole time we were doing Napoleon, you were saying, but Raddad, what about America? Well, here you go. I mentioned the Louisiana Purchase. Do you want to talk pre-War of 1812, kind of like what was going on?
yeah, so like the lead up to the War of 1812, right? Um you said it at the beginning, it had a lot to do with trade and commerce. Um the Embargo Act kind of set things off as far as like American policy goes. The
Mm-hmm.
British and the French obviously were just in just war. I think they've been at war since like the beginning of time. But anyway, I mean they needed um, the other side to hurt economically, and so the United States, Thomas Jefferson started pushing the Embargo Act, and basically
Right.
uh, it made trade with either country um, illegal. It was basically the prohibition of imports um, from outside, uh, from Great Britain, from France, from anywhere. The following act kind of excluded it to those two countries in particular. But yeah, so there was all sorts of trade wars
Tom
going on.
tomfoolery.
Tomfoolery.
I'm
Tomfoolery.
trying to speak in the dialect of the time.
Yeah, I mean it
But
was the Embargo Act kind of fucked up our economy, but at the same time it helped us I guess produce more domestic goods because we weren't getting the imports from foreign countries. But at the same
well,
time we weren't trading.
sometimes there's good stuff that happens when we get put in a bind. It makes us have to think on our toes, and I think that's a byproduct of that. I want to squash something here too. I hear a lot of people say, Ryan, Raddad, what about Hamilton? What was Alexander Hamilton doing? Well, I just want to squash a few misnomers out there. Alexander Hamilton was kind of a shithead. People might not understand what a Federalist is. And I think the best way to put it into context of the time, Adam, you know what, because you mentioned Thomas Jefferson. He was a Republican. They had the Republic, Jefferson Republicans or Republics. Can you
Democratic
kind of break
Republicans.
down? Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah. That's a big word to forget there. But the Federalists at the time, they were against big government, right?
The Federalists were against the war. They wanted fuck, now you got me screwed up. The Federalists
I'm sorry.
they were for strong central government. So Alexander Hamilton, you mentioned first Secretary of the Treasury.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, but the Federalists in general were against the war, specifically in New England territories, because they relied on trade, on Atlantic trade, boats coming in and out. And so they thought that a war with Great Britain would just annihilate their commerce, and it's essentially what happened for at least short term.
Agreed. But I wanted to touch on that mostly because it, I think a lot of people assume that there's this at the time, like after the Revolutionary War, we were all like pretty like in sync. But I think there was a lot of people who, well, long story short, Hamilton said democracy was a virus. Like these certain people thought that like we needed to squash basically people. I don't think people understand that he was against democracy as a whole at the time, um, and was more happy to fill the coffers of his wealthy friends at the time. Jefferson was awesome. He had slaves, but he was awesome. We're still. I'm saying this is from Raddad's perspective. They should have made a musical called Aaron Burr. Look him up. He was third vice president and he was under Jefferson. He did a lot of good things during the time. He was actually against slavery and all this other stuff. There were good people at the time, but they should have made a musical about a sickly looking nerd named Aaron Burr. Look him up. Future episode. Anyways, that's all I wanted to get out of the way. This is all in the lead up to War of 1812. Speaking of Canadians, got a song in the background called "Come On, You Bold Canadians."
Success unto our volunteers who did their rights maintain, and to our bold commander, General Brock by name.
Oh, Brock! Sir Isaac Brock, that is. The original Mountie man. Woo!
Isaac Brock's sort of a national hero in Canada.
Yes, he is. And to our Canadian friends, we say, "How stands the glass around?" A song and music of the Redcoats. Anyway, there'll be a playlist in the episode description. I just thought, do you want to talk on the Canadians a bit?
Well, how do you want to do this? You want to start from the beginning of the war, like what tipped it off? Like we obviously we talked about the
I'm
trade
all over
wars.
the map tonight.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
There was no outline for this episode, folks. We're just winging it.
All right, look, here's the deal. If you want me to go through the whole thing from the beginning, I didn't know if we wanted to say some things up top. Granted, we're almost 15 minutes into it, and we've just been thinking around. But I had to get some things out of there, out the gate. All right.
We can go in order, or we can jump around.
Let's jump into it right off the bat because some people might want to know. Like, let's talk Canada at the time. Canada. Isaac Brock. What do you know about Isaac Brock, Adam?
Isaac fucking Brock. He was like what would you call him? Like a governor general.
I don't think they really. It was just like I don't think it. I think everything was so brand new. Like everything is in its infancy. So
yeah, I mean, he was a pretty big deal, right? He wanted to be. I think from reading about him and watching some of the documentaries that I watched, I think he really wanted to be like a very prominent British officer, maybe war hero. I'm not sure. He became one, I think, in his own right with what happened. Him dying in battle gloriously, and his men carrying out the task at hand. But I think he was an aristocrat through and through. He had a couple easy. I mean, I don't know if I want to call it easy, but like some of the beginning battles, Fort Mackinac, like there wasn't even a shot fired and the fort was surrendered. So Brock got the, glory for that. And then Detroit.
I mean, that's pretty badass.
Well, apparently what happened there was the American commander of the forces at Fort Mackinac didn't even know the war had started. So like
That's Michigan for you, dude.
So Brock and his guys show up and they're like, we're here to war. And this guy's like just getting done eating his Cheerios, and he's like,
puts down his founder's IPA and he goes, man, I just want to rock. I don't want to roll. I just want to hang, bro. You want to smoke some Saginaw ditch weed and hang out?
Yeah,
we're from Michigan. We don't want to fight.
The first two, I guess, battle. I don't even know what the fuck to call them, but that took place in Michigan was Fort Mackinac and Fort Detroit, and both of them were like done before any shots were fired. Detroit, I think there was a little skirmish here and there, but like that whole thing, I don't know if we're going to get into that whole battle, but like,
it's embarrassing.
The General William Hull ordeal, like just.
Oh, he's a bitch. Dude, he was a bitch. So here's the deal. This motherfucker, he was so terrified of Indians. He was like, oh, they come in the night. They're going to put a curse on me. They got magic sticks and haunt my bones. I'm too scared. Like he was like crying. He's like, oh God, oh, please don't let me go to battle. And then they like surrender. We surrendered. Hey, folks, news alert. We Americans, first country we ever surrendered to was Canada. Because this guy was scared of Indians. Partially.
In one of the documentaries that I watched, apparently, so Brock and Tecumseh had arranged their men outside of Fort Detroit, and they were marching them past the fort, and then they would do a big loop around, and they would come back, and they would just keep looping around. So it looked like from the outside that there were thousands of troops like marching outside the fort, when it was really just a small number. And given his a fear of natives, seeing all these Native Americans passing by the fort, probably dressed in war paint, all ready to roll.
Yep.
Dude, this guy was shitting his pants. Apparently
filled his pantaloons.
Got wasted, drooling all over himself. He was like, I can't do it.
I didn't know war meant we had to kill people. Fuck. The Indians are gonna cast a spell on me. I surrender. Yeah. So look, Brock was a great dude. He was a major general, British Army, colonial administrator from Greenock. Brock was assigned to Lower Canada in 1802. Despite facing desertions and near mutinies, he commanded his regiment in Upper Canada, part of present-day Ontario. Been to Ontario, beautiful country. Canada's great. I got nothing but happy things to say. Shout out to our man Justin on the Discord. This one was your suggestion. You're the man. While many in Canada and Britain believed war could be averted, Brock began to ready the army and militia for what was to come. When the War of 1812 broke out, the populace was prepared, and quick victories at Fort Mackinac and Detroit defeated American invasion efforts. So I think Canada specifically was worried that we were going to take over and say, hey, Canada, you're America as well. And despite what historians, scholars of this war have said, the main reason really was trade. It wasn't about adding Canada to America. It was about America and their efforts in expanding the colonies beyond, not just into Canada as it being America as well, but really just striking down the British influence, because British strength at the time was spread. We hoped for a quick victory, and especially with them having to deal with the man of the hour at the time, Napoleon, Emperor of basically what he called the world, things seemed like they were going to be an easy one too, but you had people like Brock who were quick to move. And I think Brock was an incredible adversary to have to face, especially during the time. But like I said, when it came to the American ships, a lot of them were just privateers. A lot of the people that were on the sea, I mean, we had like, to put it into comparison terms, I sent you this text. It was basically like a middle school football team versus the New England Patriots on sea. Like, British sea power was nothing to mess with. And we thought we could pull a quick one, and a lot of it was, mismatched and spread thin. And unfortunately, we weren't able to stop Brock. And good on him. They got their sovereignty ultimately. As a country, Canada, granted, I guess they shed a tear when Queen Elizabeth died, but anyway,
Yeah,
the war.
the
Go ahead.
just real quick, the thing with, yeah, I guess I don't know if we would have taken over Canada and made it into like this whole new territory, but Brock is credited with preserving Canadian sovereignty, and I think that's why he's so celebrated. I mean,
Totally.
I'll fucking admit I've never heard of this guy, or maybe I did years ago in studies at some point, but like I didn't really know about this guy up until I started looking into the War of 1812 for this episode. And I mean, this guy's a big deal in Canada, and I
Totally.
feel kind of stupid that I don't know who he is or never had heard of him.
Well, I mean, that's why we do this stuff, man. I mean, I appreciate it, and if I ever go up to Ontario again, I'll definitely go and visit like some sites and cheers a Diet Coke to his name.
Well,
8 months sobriety today. Saying
8 months sobriety. Damn, congrats, dude.
thank you. But
yeah, go ahead.
no, I think he's a hero. I think, and rightfully so. And I don't mince words when I say heroes when it comes to history. I talk about, and I look through these things, and I enjoy myself a tale or two about the past. And he did his work for his country. I mean, you don't get Canadians until this really happens, this point in time. And it does attribute itself to things like the British, and unfortunately, when this war ends, the winners are Canada, the losers are the Native Americans.
100%. Yeah.
So let's really dive in here. The War of 1812. War of 1812 was fought by the U.S. and its indigenous allies against the United Kingdom and its own indigenous allies in British North America, with limited participation by Spain and Florida. As I said to you in text, 20 Spaniards died. May they rest in peace.
So I looked it up afterward. I don't know if it took place, but there was a Battle of Pensacola. So it was Spanish
shit.
Florida. It could have been there. I don't know. I didn't look it up.
Well, rest in peace, friends. It began when the United States declared war on 18 June 1812, although peace terms were agreed upon in the December 1814 Treaty of Ghent. The war did not officially end until the peace treaty was ratified by Congress on 17 February 1815. Tensions originated in long-standing differences over territorial expansion in North America and British support for Native American tribes who opposed U.S. colonial settlement in the Old Northwest. These escalated in 1807 after the Royal Navy began enforcing tighter restrictions on American trade with France and press-ganged men they claimed as British subjects, even those with American citizenship certificates. So, like I said, little tugboats out there with Americans on it were basically subverted into British
Yeah.
forces.
So let's talk about this for a second, because it was the biggest reason for the war, right? Was the impressment of American sailors, whether they be American born or British born, Irish, Scottish, whatever. Um, they would seize our vessels and take people off of the ships and make them serve in the Royal Navy. That was a huge deal. Um, during the same time, Great Britain passed what's called the Orders in Council, which goes back to like this whole trade thing. So Great Britain would require anybody trading with France to stop, obtain like a license or pay some sort of tax and duty to the government or the crown of Great Britain before they would go and do their trade with France. Now I asked myself this over and over, like, how the fuck did they enforce this? Like, when there's all these ships, I don't know, sailing across, I've never sailed across the Atlantic Ocean. I've flown over it, but I've never sailed it. But
What?
like, where the fuck are like, how do you enforce this? If like, aren't there ways around? Am I this dumb when it comes to navigating the oceans?
Well,
How are they gonna take it? Well, I mean, I guess probably some got through, but like, they would.
you mean to tell me you were in the Navy and you were never on a boat?
That's right.
I got that every time I told somebody I was on the Navy. No, man, I was in Greece.
I was
Look,
on pier duty.
I was on pier duty, brother. You know what? I'm a survivor. I'm a veteran of the Reykjavik Wars on my liver.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It just baffles my mind that the way, like the embargo act, right? How do you cut off trade with the outside world? Imagine if we were to do that right now. Like, we can,
Oh, I
like,
know.
during the Trump administration, he raised tariffs and whatnot, and kind of started his own little trade war. But how do you just, the world is so globalized now that like you can't just like not trade with anybody. Canada is our biggest trading partner, if I remember correctly. Um, it just baffles my mind how things were able to
Well,
be.
it's an easy fix for Britain because they just take whatever boats they see. America's just like, you know, I'll slide some coin under the table, look the other way, and maybe there's a 50-50 shot you get across the Atlantic. But I mean, there's different routes you can take at the time, depending on where you go. You just can't straight shot it right into the port of London or whatever. You know, you got to do some tomfoolery.
I almost spit my drink out.
you, you there's some Mediterranean routes you might want to take. You might want to go south. You might want to go the other way. It's just yeah, there was different ways that they would go about things, you know, and I'm sure there were ways to pay off British officers too, unless you got some anal retentive guy who was like, "No, sir, I will not take this. I will charge you with the whip of my cat of nine tails." You know, like they would do things and it would suck because there was no I'm sorry, I am from Kentucky, sir, and this is the boat named after my mammy. They would just be like, no, this boat is now the USS Primrose or whatever British bullshit they want to call it, and when we are taking your loaves of bread because we suck up all the good shit. Meanwhile, I mean, Napoleon knew that the best way to fight against the British was to cut off their trade. So, meanwhile, he was using that against them. Uh, a powerful motivation for the Americans, according to historian Norman K. Rajord, notes, was their threatened sense of independence, too. So, you got to think, uh, even though the Revolutionary War happened and by 1793, where they basically said, okay, fine, fuck you, you got your independence. There was some real sense of like, no, 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 we're our own country, damn it. We're a big kid now. We had to kind of put our foot down, and we wanted to uphold this kind of sense of national honor. And in the face of what they consider British aggression, insults such as the Chesapeake Leopard affair. You heard of this? It was a naval engagement off the coast of Norfolk, Virginia on June 22nd, 1807, between the British fourth-rate HMS Leopard and the American frigate USS Chesapeake. The crew of Leopard pursued, attacked, and boarded the American frigate looking for deserters from the Royal Navy. So when things like this would happen, they'd be like, hey, bitch, that's our ship.
Yeah, the Leopard. Yeah, I took one little note regarding it. They killed like 3 or 4 sailors, and British boarded and took some of the deserters that were on the ship, on the Chesapeake. So
yeah, dude.
Yeah.
And so that's not cool.
But it was common things, I think. I probably not
but
to this extent, but like going on to these ships and taking these guys off. Like,
right.
That was a big issue.
So Britain was the largest trading partner of the U.S., receiving 80% of American cotton and 50% of all other American exports. The British public and press resented the growing mercantile and commercial competition. Historian Reginald Horseman states that a large section of influential British opinion thought that the United States presented a threat to British maritime supremacy. That's how he talks in my head. During the 7 Years' War, Britain introduced rules governing trade with their enemies. The rule of 1756, which the U.S. had temporarily agreed to when signing the Jay Treaty, which was the Treaty of Amity, Commerce, and Navigation between His Britannic Majesty and the United States of America, commonly known as the Jay Treaty. There's just this, like, again, I've talked about this before. There's the pencil pushing John Adams way, and then there's the fourscore and fuck your mother way, cowboy way of getting things done. And there were pirates, and there were British sea officers, and there was muskets, and then there was democracy is a virus. I'm a federalist. Meh. There was a lot of different ways to get things done, whether it be with coin or with a Declaration of Independence. I don't know. This is a tricky time, folks. And usually the best way to show you mean business is war.
Yeah, the United States was not in any position to start a war with Great Britain at the time.
Nope.
I mean, let's be honest. I mean, we were still a relatively new country. We didn't really have a standing military. There was just militias all over the country, half-ass training once a month.
It's militias that won us the war to begin with that we had just fought.
I know, that's true. I should give them more credit.
The militias helped us win the war that we had just won, and now we didn't have a standing army, really. We didn't have a navy, didn't have an army. We had ideas about what to do. We're flying by the seat of our pants here. We're kind of just coasting. And what happened here again, it's basically our second war of independence, but it's really more about setting a precedent and saying, like, hey, we are independent. You can't take our stuff. You can't push us around. You're a big bully. Go fuck your mom, basically. So I get where we were coming from. And inevitably, I don't know again, like I said, there wasn't really a winner in this whole thing, and we're gonna keep going through. Whether the annexation of Canada was a primary American war objective has been debated. I will say, in basically inciting or playing devil's advocate to that argument, it wasn't a complete non-option. Like, I'm sure there were political leaders or people at the time, I'm sure even Madison, who was pro going to war. We haven't really talked about James Madison, who was the president at the time. He was into the idea of going to war. Like, he was war hungry. He would have probably said, "Look, we're at war now," if it wasn't for the fact that Congress had to vote for it.
Yeah, I think he was one of the original war hawks at the time. There was quite a number of them, but yeah, James
His
Madison was definitely one of them.
his wife, who was this Dolly, who was this beautiful woman, according to historians, was quite a bit younger than him. And he was like this nebbish, kind of Nixon-y nerd, like war nerd guy who just liked to sit and read his books and be like, I like to learn about Alexander the Great and war and all that other stuff and blah blah blah. And then this happens, and I think he was pretty happy about it. But nevertheless, even though President Madison claimed permanent annexation was not an objective, he recognized once acquired, it would be difficult to relinquish. A large faction in Congress actively advocated this policy, including Richard Mentor Johnson, who stated, quote, "I shall never die content until I see England's expulsion from North America and her territories incorporated into the U.S. John Adams Harper claimed the author of Nature himself had marked our limits in the south by the Gulf of Mexico and on the north by the regions of eternal frost. So there was kind of an idea of like, yeah, maybe we could have America too upstairs. I don't know. I just wanted to mention that.
The land of eternal frost.
That's right.
I think we're pretty close to that land. You and I both are probably, what, 2 hours from Canada?
2 hours from Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when I was a kid, because of the drinking age, people would drive over there. It was 19.
Yeah, I never got that excited about drinking when I was in high school, but I mean, fucking, we went to Greece when we were 19 and we were legal to drink. So, yeah, it all worked out.
Yeah, it wasn't that.
That's a long way to go for just a beer or a cocktail.
Yeah.
Or just to get
Yeah,
shit out. At that point, you're probably just puking in the back alley somewhere.
Somebody's like, "Oh boy, I think that's his first Molson." So invasions of Canada in 1812, an American army commanded by William Hull invaded Upper Canada on July 12th, arriving at Sandwich after crossing the Detroit River. Yes, Windsor, Ontario is called Sandwich, according to my notes. His forces were chiefly composed of untrained and ill-disciplined militiamen. Hull issued a proclamation ordering all British subjects to surrender or the horrors and calamities of war will stalk before you. Fun. The proclamation said that Hull wanted to free them from the tyranny of Great Britain, giving them the liberty, security, and wealth that his own country enjoyed unless they preferred war, slavery, and destruction. Now, again, a lot of black men fought for the British because they told them they would be free. So in Canada, there were African American men who fought for them, or the British, if you will. Hull's proclamation only helped to stiffen resistance to the American attacks as he lacked artillery and supplies. Hull also had to fight just to maintain his own lines of communication. Hull withdrew to the American side of the river on 7 August 1812 after receiving news of Shawnee ambush on Major Thomas Van Horn's 200 men who had been sent to support the American supply convoy. Half of Horn's troops had been killed. Hull had also faced a lack of support from his officers and fear among his troops of a possible massacre by unfriendly indigenous forces. A group of 600 troops led by Lieutenant Colonel James Miller remained in Canada, attempting to supply the American position in the Sandwich area with little success. What's your favorite sandwich?
My favorite sandwich.
Yeah, what everybody wants to know, Danger Zone.
Fuck. I love all sandwiches equally. God, I don't know. Reuben or maybe
Nice.
a grilled ham and cheese.
Grilled ham and cheese. I'm gonna go roast beef with some horseradish. Is that right? Horseradish? Yeah.
Roast beef and horseradish. Yeah, sure.
And a wheat, fresh, or no, sourdough bread. Toasted. Yeah, and a big old dill pickle.
I've really started to like sourdough and rye bread in my older age. I just like it. It's
I do
nice.
too.
It's a good change up from the old wheat or white, just having a little bit
Yeah,
of spice in your bread.
all I needed as a kid was hillbilly bread and peanut butter, but now I'm like, give me some flavor. Toast it.
So
Slice of cheddar.
yeah, I grew up. I didn't. I mean, my parents were divorced growing up, but I didn't. Neither of them had anything, and I grew up with not a lot in the house, in the refrigerator, and in the cupboards. But I used to make this sandwich. It wasn't a sandwich. It was just white bread with mayonnaise, and I would sprinkle pepper on it. Now imagine what that looks like: piece of bread, mayonnaise, pepper. To me, it looked like bird shit. So I called that my favorite snack was called bird shit on bread.
It sounds like something your dad would say to you. That look like bird shit.
I don't know
Fucking
if it's
Adam's
ever a
eating
thing,
bird
but
shit again.
that was my go-to snack. That and dry ramen. Just crunch up ramen in a pack and just pour the seasoning in it. Don't cook it or anything. Just like
Oh God.
hard ramen
You probably
popcorn.
had the weirdest looking kid shit.
Oh God,
I
I
think
don't know.
my kids were I think my kids been ugh
I eat
gross,
anything,
dried up.
man. Yeah, dude, dried up ramen is like having a bag of potato chips or something.
Are you
I don't,
a fucking possum?
I maybe I don't fucking know.
You half
Tasted good.
raccoon.
It's probably why when I got into the Navy, they replaced all my teeth because they were all cracked and chipped from fucking raw ramen noodles.
He's just he's just gnawing on an MRE. Oh,
Uh,
Adam, you're supposed to heat it up. Fuck that.
we
I'm
didn't have a
hungry.
microwave. I don't know. And I wasn't allowed to use a stove. Maybe I don't fucking know. I just made the food all the time.
The more you know. Interesting. All right. So after Hull surrendered Detroit, General William Henry Harrison took command of the American Army of the Northwest. He set out to retake the city, which is now defended by Colonel Henry Proctor in Tecumseh. We haven't really talked about Tecumseh. He's an interesting chief.
Yeah,
I
he
feel,
was a he
I,
was a he was a main character in this story, dude.
yeah, we should hit on Tecumseh here. What do you know about the indigenous at this time, Tecumseh?
Yeah, so he was what was he, Shawnee chief?
Yeah,
He was basically trying to bring together a confederacy of tribes, and he wanted to push back against that American expansion that we were talking about earlier, and his whole, I guess, mission was to bring tribes together and to get the support that they needed to resist American expansion into native lands.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, they wanted a good deal to come out of it, hopefully something that would benefit them. It really, 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 really sucks when people are just moving in and forcing some sort of like current modernity and civility of like American, or not even American, but like British culture, and it just doesn't. The indigenous people are definitely people who understand the land, understand they are here, they're the original homeowner, and then these tenants move in and they're like, well, now we're gonna drink our tea and eat our crumpets, and then we're gonna wear these weird fucking powdered wigs, and then that's cool, right? And they're like, we have different ways, white man.
Yeah.
Do not give us your blankets; they make us sick.
Yeah, he was allied with Brock, obviously. You mentioned
Yeah.
Proctor. I think him and Proctor kind of butt heads on a lot of things. But yeah, that's got to be a tough position at the time, because you're fighting and allying with a white man who basically come from the same place in Europe. Obviously this is much later, so there are American born people that he's dealing with, but at the same time, it's he probably had a lot of distrust, and when he
I would think so, yeah, and I think he'd be pretty fucking sad if he saw the way things had happened and rolled out in the next 100 years after that.
Yeah, and I think the sad part about this is going back to the very beginning when you said the biggest loser and all of this uh this just war, which essentially happened for no reason, was the Native Americans, because they didn't get shit. Tecumseh, when he died, basically,
yeah, spoiler alert.
Oh shit, yeah, Battle of the Thames.
It's okay. No, we'll talk about the Thames, but let me give you a little brief about Tecumseh here. He was like Adam mentioned, Shawnee chief. Pour one out for your Shawnee chiefs, and warrior who promoted resistance to the expansion of the United States onto Native American lands. A persuasive orator, Tecumseh traveled wildly, forming a Native American confederacy and promoting tribal unity. Even though his efforts to unite North Americans ended with his death in the War of 1812, he became an iconic folk hero in American, Indigenous, and Canadian popular history. In 1805, Tecumseh's younger brother, Tenskwata, who came to be known as the Shawnee Prophet, founded a religious movement that called upon Native Americans to reject European influences and return to a more traditional lifestyle. In 1808, Tecumseh and Tenskwata established Prophetstown, a village in present-day Indiana that grew into a large multi-tribal community. Tecumseh traveled constantly, spreading the prophet's message and eclipsing his brother in prominence. Tecumseh proclaimed that Native Americans owned their lands in common and urged tribes not to cede more territory unless all agreed. His message alarmed American leaders as well as Native leaders who sought accommodation with the United States. In 1811, when Tecumseh was in the South recruiting allies, Americans under William Henry Harrison defeated Tenskwata, the Battle of Tippecanoe, and destroyed Prophetstown. In the War of 1812, Tecumseh joined his cause with the British, recruited warriors, and helped capture Detroit in August 1812. The following year, he led an unsuccessful campaign against the United States in Ohio and Indiana. When U.S. naval forces took control of Lake Erie in 1813, Tecumseh reluctantly retreated with the British into Upper Canada, where American forces engaged them at the Battle of the Thames. That Lake Erie battle sucked. This is shallow water, and I don't know if you've tried to bring in a bunch of British ships into shallow water, just playing park and sit. It's not good, man.
How deep was it?
I mean, it's not deep. Well, we talked about it with the Teddy Roosevelt thing, and I mean, this is like 100 years earlier that when they were trying to bring the horses and the men into Cuba, and they're all just like, well, we lost like the first three guys jumped off and drowned. We don't have much for regulation. Like Teddy lost one of his horses, and he's like the main guy going there. I mean,
He probably had
these
it mounted
battles.
afterward. I don't know.
We thought we had shit shows in our day.
Hey, hold on. Speaking of Teddy and his animals, and the fuck you did Jim Carrey without me, I can't believe that. I know I'm the history guy,
I'm
but I even made a Jim Carrey reference on that last Teddy episode, and I fucking saw you posted Jim Carrey episode on Spotify or some shit. I was like,
That's
right,
right.
is this guy kidding me? I'm like the
It's a good
biggest
promo.
I'm the
I
biggest
know.
frickin' Jim Carrey fan there is out there. You know what? Not to get off too much of a tangent, but I just watched after I saw you do the Jim Carrey episode. I for the very first time, the only Jim Carrey movie I haven't seen was The Truman Show, and I watched it for the very first time the other night. Never
That's an
seen it.
awesome movie.
Yeah, never seen it. It was yeah, it was pretty good.
And if I don't see you again, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Yeah, that was
It's a
that was
great
good.
movie.
Yeah.
I love
Anyway,
the end of that movie.
yeah, where he walks through
No,
the fucking thing where he's like where he hits the wall in his little dinghy or whatever the hell he's his little
yeah,
sailboat. Yeah.
no. He he says, Ed Harris, you can take your finger and sit and spin on it, buddy. I'm out.
Why does Ed Harris
Um,
always play the biggest prick in these movies? I
I've
think of
heard he's not. I've heard he's not that friendly of a dude outside of acting, but he's an amazing actor. He's really good.
yeah, when he started trying to like sink his ship, I was getting mad at him.
Yeah, you're being dumb. Anyway, so Tecumseh, there's a little bit about Tecumseh I wanted to kind of bring you up to speed on. Um, so the Mississippi River Valley from 1813 to 1815 was the western frontier of the U.S. in 1812. The territory acquired in the Louisiana Purchase of 1803 contained almost no American settlements west of the Mississippi except around St. Louis, and a few forts and trading posts in Boone Slick. Fort Bellefontaine was an old trading post converted to an army post in 1804, and this served as regional headquarters. We're talking like pre-Wild West here, folks. Fort Madison was built along the Mississippi in Iowa in 1808 and had been repeatedly attacked by British allied Sauk or Sac, a group of Native Americans of the Eastern Woodlands culture. Since its construction, the U.S. Army abandoned Fort Madison in September 1813 after the indigenous fighters attacked it and besieged it with support from the British. This was one of the few battles fought west of the Mississippi. Black Hawk played a leadership role. Black Hawk was a Sauk leader and warrior who lived in what is now the Midwestern United States. So the Indians were out, and they were primarily with the Brits. I know I mentioned indigenous that fought with us, but I think a lot of the times it was because of some sort of agreement or bartering or with the muzzle of a gun. I can't say we fought this one cleanly, nor have we. I think the only good war after being into history for a long time for me, maybe the Second World War. I don't know. Everything else it's so gray when you go through this shit.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Um,
But real quick, when
Go ahead.
dude, there were so many treaties signed and so much land given up. And I think that's an important point to make here. I mean, this recurring theme of Native Americans being the losers in this thing is that like so you're talking about down south during this time, which really there wasn't a whole lot going on down there. Like when we did the Revolutionary War episode, we talked a lot about the Southern battles, but during the War of 1812, there wasn't really anything down south outside of, the Battle of New Orleans, obviously the big one. But like even Andrew Jackson signed, he negotiated these treaties where we saw Native Americans giving up millions upon millions of acres of land. The Treaty of Fort Jackson, which took place in spring of 1814, that was, you know, basically 23 million acres handed over. It became basically Alabama and Georgia. And so,
Mm-hmm.
Just going back to what you're saying, just, yeah, just Tecumseh died and just everything fell to shit. And they just signing treaties and trying to make peace and giving up land. And it really forged the rest of the 1800s, the rest of the 19th century, as far as like American uh, policy regarding Native Americans. Uh, and they just, to this day, probably still getting fucking short end of the stick, man. Sucks.
Yeah. I mean, there's 2 points I want to hit on in this. You mentioned Tecumseh dying in that the Thames, but like part of you got to remember too. These guys, they lose when they would lose a commander like that or a figurehead. I mean, we even hit on it in the Revolutionary War when one of the generals went down. Uh, the rest of the chickens in the coop would start running around like their heads got cut off. They don't when you don't have that leader there in battle specifically, it becomes such a like clusterfuck. And not to say that Indians weren't incredible in the field. I mean that we used their tactics in battle as well, like concealment, camouflage, things like that, attacking from behind, from vantage points. There were different things that we gained from fighting with them. There was different things that we learned specifically about the lay of the land. But I think at this time there was that, but then there was also um, it's sad really in retrospect too, because all you're going to get from the folk music of the time is how great we were at fighting the Indians, but it was really kind of a travesty what was really happening. Um, both sides placed great importance on gaining control of the Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence River because of the difficulties of land-based communication. The British already had a small squadron of warships on Lake Ontario when the war began and had the initial advantage. The Americans established a Navy yard at Sackett's Harbor, New York, a port on Lake Ontario. Commodore Isaac Chauncey took charge of the thousands of sailors and shipwrights assigned there and recruited more from New York. They completed a warship, the corvette USS Madison, in 45 days. Ultimately, almost 3,000 men at the shipyard built 11 warships and many smaller boats and transports. Army forces were also stationed at Sackett's Harbor when they camped out through the town, far surpassing the small population of 900. Officers were housed with families. Madison Barracks was later built at Sackett's Harbor. I want to talk about that because in the Revolutionary War, we had about 3 million population overall in the colonies. By 1812, we had doubled up to about 7 million. So people were screwing and having babies, which is good. You want people to be doing the things that they're best at, fucking fighting and farting. So on May 25th, 1813, Fort Niagara and the American Lake Ontario Squadron began bombarding Fort George. An American amphibious force assaulted Fort George on the northern end of the Niagara River on 27 May, captured it without serious losses. The British abandoned Fort Erie and headed towards Burlington Heights. The British position was close to collapsing in Upper Canada. The Iroquois considered changing sides and ignored a British appeal to come to their aid. However, the Americans did not pursue the retreating British forces until they had largely escaped and organized a counteroffensive at the Battle of Stony Creek on 5 June. The British launched a surprise attack at 2 a.m., leading to confused fighting and a strategic British victory. See, you attack the armies, especially when the leaders aren't corralling them, people get confused, and that's just what happened. So, yes. Let me see here. Do you want to talk about, let's see. Do you have anything you wanted to talk about as far as about with James Madison and like his presidency overall? We should probably hit on him. I mean, we've hit on Tecumseh, we've hit on Brock. I alluded to him having a younger, pretty wife. We could fast forward to the burning of Washington.
Yeah, you can fast forward. I mean, I don't really have anything to say about Madison. I mean, with regards to the war, I mean, he definitely was, he's the one who sent the damn war declaration to Congress, um, with all his gripes and complaints, which we've already discussed. I mean, the war declaration in both the Senate and the House were essentially everybody was for it, with the exception of the Federalists in New England. And so I actually have the vote counts here. It was 79-49 in the House and 19-13 in the Senate. So goes to show how early we're on, just because the lack of, what's that, 32 senators and roughly 130 in the House. So, I mean, there wasn't this enormous population in our government to debate everything. I mean, it was pretty lopsided as far as the war declaration and moving on. But yeah, I don't really have much to add with Madison. I mean, that would be a whole episode we could do.
Yeah, and I'm totally happy. Like I love learning about presidents or leaders, military leaders in their lives, specifically in this time, because it's always fascinating to me to find out like when they got an interest in politics, or like how they started, how they kind of moved through their course of history, and like kind of what was going on at the time. But to get to the burning of Washington, in August 1814, a force of 2,500 soldiers under General Ross had just arrived in Bermuda aboard the HMS Royal Oak. 3 frigates, 3 sloops, and 10 other vessels. Released from the Peninsular War by victory, the British intended to use them for diversionary raids along the coast of Maryland and Virginia in response to Prevost's request. They decided to employ this force, together with the naval and military units already on the station, to strike at the national capital. Anticipating the attack, valuable documents, including the original Constitution, were removed to Leesburg, Virginia. The British task force advanced up the Chesapeake, routing Commodore Barney's flotilla of gunboats, carried out the raid on Alexandria, landed ground forces that bested the U.S. defenders at the Battle of Bladensburg, and carried out the burning of Washington. U.S. Secretary of War John Armstrong Jr. insisted that the British were going to attack Baltimore rather than Washington, even as British Army and naval units were on their way to Washington. Brigadier General William H. Winder, who had burned several bridges in the area, assumed the British would attack Annapolis, and was reluctant to engage because he mistakenly thought the British Army was twice its size. The inexperienced state militia was easily routed in the Battle of Bladensburg, opening the route to Washington. British troops led by Major General Robert Ross, accompanied by Rear Admiral George Cockburn, the 3rd Brigade attacked and captured Washington with a force of 4,500. On 24 August, after the British had finished looting the interiors, Ross directed his troops to set fire to a number of public buildings, including the White House and United States Capitol. Extensive damage to the interiors and the contents of both were subsequently reported. U.S. government and military officials fled to Virginia, while Secretary of the United States Navy William Jones ordered the Washington Navy Yard and nearby fort to be razed in order to prevent its capture. Public buildings in Washington were destroyed by the British through private residences, though private residences were ordered spared. Burned our fucking White House.
They did, man. It was a retribution for what we did at York. That was the whole thing.
I will say Dolly Madison made sure that they took one of the primo portraits of former general of the Army, of the U.S. colonial army and first president, George Washington.
The Gilbert Stuart painting, which is still in the White House.
Right. They took that because the British saw him as a complete and total piece of shit. And they wanted to take a dump on it. And we were like, no, sir. He's a hero. Don't take our Washington.
There was a quote in the PBS documentary about the burning of Washington, and I wrote it down because I thought it was funny.
Oh yeah.
He said, the guy they were interviewing in the documentary, he said, Washington, this is quote, Washington was a swampy, mosquito-infested, malarial town of just 8,000 people, full of tree stumps and refuse, end quote.
Oh, it's a horrible place to put the fucking Capitol. It's just a gross, and now you can't drive in it to save your penis. It sucks there.
Yeah, you definitely, you get backed up driving around there. As someone who lived there for 6 years, I know what it's like. It's horrible.
You gotta solve a fucking sorcerer's riddle to get to one street, and then you gotta fucking walk on one leg and touch your nose and fucking say the alphabet backwards to get the code to go through some transport to get somewhere else. It's all backwards, man. And there's some that believe it was a secret, nefarious Illuminati spell place to put it in a place. It's just a fucking mosquito-ridden bog.
Yeah, it's hot.
But now
in Washington.
It's unnaturally hot. It's like Cuban heat.
Yeah.
But anyway, there was a siege on Fort McHenry. After taking some munitions from the Washington Munitions Depot, the British boarded their ships and moved on to their major target, the heavily fortified major city of Baltimore. Because some of their ships were held up in the raid on Alexandria, they delayed their movement, allowing Baltimore an opportunity to strengthen fortifications and bring in a new federal troops and state militia units. The Battle of Baltimore began with the British landing on 12 September 1814 at North Point, where they were met by American militia further up the Patapsco Neck Peninsula. An exchange of fire began with casualties on both sides. The British Army commander, Major General Robert Ross, was killed by snipers. The British paused, then continued to march northwestward to face the stationed Maryland and Baltimore City militia units at Godley Wood. The Battle of North Point was fought for several afternoon hours in a musketry and artillery duel. So muskets and cannon fire. The British also planned to simultaneously attack Baltimore by water on the following day, although the Royal Navy was unable to reduce Fort McHenry at the entrance to Baltimore Harbor in support of an attack from the northeast by the British Army. The British eventually realized that they could not force the passage to attack Baltimore in coordination with the land force. A last-ditch night feint and barrage attack during a heavy rainstorm was led by Captain Charles Napier around the fort up the middle branch of the river to the west. Split and misdirected partly in the storm, it turned back after suffering heavy casualties from the alert gunners of Fort Covington and Battery Babcock. The British called off the attack and sailed downriver to pick up their army, which had retreated from the east side of Baltimore. All the lights were extinguished in Baltimore the night of the attack, and the fort was bombarded for 25 hours. Damn. The only light was given off by the exploding shells over Fort McHenry, illuminating the flag that was still flying over the fort. The defense of the fort inspired the American lawyer Francis Scott Key to write The Defense of Fort McHenry, a poem that was later set to music as the Star-Spangled Banner. Right. America, America, God shed his grace light on thee. Hell yeah, brother.
That's not the Star Spangled Banner.
I know, man.
I know, you know.
I'm just saying it was an important, he was a lawyer, but he was there for, at the time, for good reasons.
Wasn't he getting his buddy out of jail or something?
Basically something like that. I'm looking it up. Key was a lawyer in Maryland, Washington, D.C. for 4 decades and worked on important cases, including the Burr conspiracy trial, and he argued numerous times before the Supreme Court. He was nominated for district attorney for the District of Columbia by President Andrew Jackson. Ooh, he's a future episode. President from 1829 to 1837. American lawyer as well. Planner, general, and statesman. 7th Prez. Future episode. Also a populist president. I love the story about his big party when he got inaugurated.
Who, Jackson?
Had like a 4-day party because he said all of the Americans can come and party. They had to literally throw the kegs out on the lawn because people wouldn't leave. They were just getting fucked up the whole time. And then he was like, all right, shut the doors. And then like people are just out on the lawn, just like, yeah, Jackson.
Jeez.
Jackson #1. Just shitting in the fucking White House, just rancid beer shits. We can't get these fuckers out of here. Well, you had to say everybody could come, Mr. President. Shit. Forgot about that. Anyway, Francis Scott Key was an important guy. He wrote the Star Spangled Banner, you fucking goofs. But yeah, it's important.
Yeah, so I know I texted you this. I was gonna save this story for a surprise, but yeah, I texted you this the other day. I went to school with a girl. Her name was Ashley Key, and she was a descendant
of Francis
Scott Key. Yes. Ashley worked on keys. No, her last name was Key. No, so I told you the other day that the author of the Star Spangled Banner, Francis Scott Key, has been a name that has been like burned into my brain since I was in probably like 2nd grade, 3rd grade, because that's when I was in school with Ashley. I don't know whatever happened to her. She moved, I don't know, 6th or 7th grade, but yeah, her name was Ashley Key, and I have a very vivid memory of that in elementary school, that she was like the great granddaughter or whatever of Francis Scott Key. It was just a interesting memory related to this this story.
That's cool, man. You're part of history, brother.
My 3 degrees separation from Francis Scott Key, or 6. Yeah.
In 1813, Creek warriors attacked Fort Mims and killed 400 to 500 people. The massacre became a rallying point for Americans. The Creek War. You know about that?
Nah, I didn't take too many notes on that. I mean, obviously heard of it, but
Well, it was an internal affair sparked by the ideas of Tecumseh, farther north in the Mississippi Valley. A faction known as the Red Sticks, so named for the color of their war sticks, had broken away from the rest of the Creek Confederacy, which wanted peace with the United States. The Red Sticks were allied with Tecumseh, who had visited the Creeks about a year before 1813 and encouraged greater resistance to the Americans. The Creek Nation was a trading partner of the United States, actively involved with British and Spanish trade as well. The Red Sticks, as well as many southern Muskogee people like the Seminole, had a long history of alliance with the British and Spanish empires. This alliance helped the North American and European powers protect each other's claims to territory in the South. What? And I see the Chattahoochee River comes up in my notes here. I just wanted to say Chattahoochee.
Pound, pound, pound on a Chattahoochee. Who is
I'm
that?
an Indian outlaw, half Cherokee and Choctaw. No, you're not anything.
Chattahoochee. Who the fuck sings this?
Didn't like. I don't know, man. We don't.
What is that? Who is that? Is that Andrew Jackson?
Way down yonder on the Chattahoochee, and I did a lot of scrubs, and not about living in a little bit of love.
Oh my God, we're gonna get roasted.
We're gonna get lambosted.
I know who sings that. I just can't think of the guy's name. Anyway,
the Indian frontier of western Georgia was the most vulnerable, but was partially fortified already. From November 1813 to January 1814, Georgia's militia and auxiliary federal troops from the Creek and Cherokee indigenous nations in the states of North Carolina and South Carolina organized the fortification of defenses along the Chattahoochee River and expeditions into Upper Creek territory in present-day Alabama. The army led by General John Floyd went to the heart of the Creek holy grounds and won a major offensive against one of the largest Creek towns at the Battle of Ottawa, killing an estimated 200 people. In November, the militia of Mississippi and combined 1,200 troops attacked the Aconcha encampment in the Battle of Holy Ground on the Alabama River. Tennessee raised a militia of 5,000 under Major General Andrew Jackson and Brigadier General John Coffee and won the battles of Tallahatchie and Talladega in November of 1813. Jackson suffered enlistment problems in the winter. He decided to combine his force, composed of Tennessee militia and pro-American Creek, with the Georgia militia. In January of 1814, however, the Red Sticks attacked his army at the Battle of Emakapaw and Enotapcha Creek. Jackson's troops repelled the attackers, but they were outnumbered and forced to withdraw to his base at Fort Strother. So, just to give you some idea before we get into the finality of this war, presidents, and this time specifically, used to be generals and fought in wars and knew their foes. In this case, Andrew Jackson would have for sure been face to face with some Native Americans in battle. Now, I want that to just go in your back pocket for later on when we cover Andrew Jackson.
Yeah.
So
this was in November of 1813? You're reading?
November to January area of 1813 to 1814.
So because I was focusing on like what was still going on up in like Americans were still trying to get into Canada at this time. Like October, November, winter of 1813, they were trying to push to Montreal. I don't know if you got any notes regarding the efforts to try to like take Montreal, but like there was two generals, U.S. generals Hampton and Wilkinson, and they were going up the St. Lawrence basically to try to take Montreal. So at the same time, I said earlier there wasn't a whole lot going on in the South, which I guess I'm sort of wrong because there was all this stuff going on with Andrew Jackson and the Creeks and everything down in Georgia.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to bring that up. That's why I wanted to bring that up, just so people could get like a overall perspective of what was going on in all directions.
Yeah.
Anyway, in July, we're gonna keep going with he keeps going back. British aid to the Red Sticks arrived after the end of the Napoleonic Wars in April of 1814, and after Admiral Alexander Cochrane assumed command from Admiral Warren in March. Captain Hugh Piggott arrived with 2 ships to arm the Red Sticks. He thought that some 6,600 warriors could be armed and recruited. It was overly optimistic at best. The Red Sticks were in the process of being destroyed as a military force. In April of 1814, the British established an outpost on the Apalachicola River. Cochrane sent a company of Royal Marines commanded by Edward Nicholas, the vessels HMS Hermes and HMS Karen, and further supplies to meet the Indians in the region. In addition to training them, Nicholas was tasked to raise a force from escaped slaves as part of the Corps of Colonial Marines. In July 1814, General Jackson complained to the governor of Pensacola, Mateo Gonzalez Manrique, that combatants from the Creek War were being harbored in Spanish territory and made reference to the British presence on Spanish soil. Although he gave an angry reply to Jackson, Manrique was alarmed at the weak position he found himself in and appealed to the British for help. Woodbine arrived on 28 July and Nicholas on 24 August. The first engagement of the British and their Creek allies against the Americans on the Gulf Coast was the 14th September 1814 attack on Fort Boyer. Captain William Percy tried to take the U.S. fort, hoping to then move on Mobile and block United States trade encroachment on the Mississippi. After the Americans repulsed Percy's forces, the British established a military presence of up to 200 Marines at Pensacola. In November, Jackson's force of 4,000 men took the town. This underlined the superiority of numbers of Jackson's force in the region. The U.S. force moved to New Orleans in late 1814. Jackson's army of 1,000 regulars and 3,000 to 4,000 militia, pirates, and other fighters, as well as civilians and slaves, built fortifications south of the city. And I want to talk about this for a second. This was like a hodgepodge, like everybody and their grandma. Like, I don't care what your creed, religion, background is, we're fighting these fuckers off. Jackson is just a motley crew of individuals at this time. Like I said, again, fighters, pirates, civilians, slaves, everybody. Little Timmy with a bad leg. He's got rage and he's ready to show it.
There was a point made in something that I read or watched that the orders that Andrew Jackson put out for the Battle of New Orleans had to be translated into, obviously it was in English, but it had to be translated to French, Spanish, and Choctaw, because
right.
there was so many people like from different backgrounds and different, just walks of life, all gearing up together.
The British Army had the objective of gaining control of the entrance of the Mississippi. To this end, an expeditionary force of 8,000 troops under General Edward Pakenham attacked Jackson's prepared defenses in New Orleans on 8 January 1815. The Battle of New Orleans was an American victory, as the British failed to take the fortifications of the East Bank. The British attack force suffered high casualties, including 291 dead, 1,262 wounded, and 484 captured or missing, whereas American casualties were light, with 13 dead, 39 wounded, and 19 missing. 13 dead, that's like 10 of them just accidentally drowned. 3 of them got diphtheria or crab.
Yeah, I mean, this was one of the most lopsided victories in the war, and probably one of the most lopsided victories of like in the American military history, I think.
Yep.
They just got wiped out. British did.
But because news didn't travel quick, there was no email, there was no phone. Things went slow. You had that whole spin still going on. So when people were like, "Oh, did you hear Jackson? He's a war hero. 1850 Battle of New Orleans, we're victorious. Fuck you, British. Hey, it is what it is. Good news is good news, and good word of mouth is good word of mouth. But it was lopsided, as Danger Zone said, and it basically kind of ensured and at this point between the Napoleonic Wars and us being like just a swarm of bees in the British's bonnets per se, Britain was over having wars. They were done sending people around. I think they were war tired, and I think even though, like I said, it ends with the treaty in 1815 as well, the Treaty of Ghent. I don't think there was much fight to be had after this. After deciding further attacks would be too costly and likely to succeed, the British fleet withdrew from the Mississippi River on 18 January. However, it was not until 27 January 1815 that the land forces rejoined the fleet, allowing for its final departure. After New Orleans, the British moved to take Mobile as a base for further operations. In preparation, General John Lambert laid siege to Fort Bowyer, taking it on 12 February 1815. However, HMS Brazen brought news of the Treaty of Ghent the next day, and the British abandoned the Gulf Coast. And that's the War of 1812. Do you have anything else you want to say?
Yeah, no, that sucks, man. The Battle of New Orleans didn't even have to happen. I mean, how slow shit moved back then. I mean, we've discussed this previously with the Revolutionary War, just how slow everything moved. So, yeah, I mean, you just have all this, this battle.
It's kind of nonsense. It's like, I remember one time somebody was telling me that there were still Japanese people like 10 years, 15 years, 20 years after World War II that still thought the war was going on. And that's with telephones and Morse code and, a huge, a way bigger population being able to tell people, say, the news of the day or whatever. It's just crazy to me to think that the way communication went during this time and how battles were fought and how little people, well, because even during Revolutionary War, we talked about those two British generals where one was just like waiting for the other to show up, and the other guy's just like, no, I think I'm gonna go and take Philadelphia. And then, it's just like, come on, guys. Like, I mean, granted, we live in the day of texting, and it's like instantaneous. Like, it's just a shit show, and it's always been a shit show. But guess what, guys? We surrendered to Canada. So this one goes out to the Canadians. We love you.
General
Anyway.
William Hull has surrendered to Canada because that guy
All
was
right.
a giant pussy.
That's there's the clip for the episode. Oh boy.
Hey,
all right.
We got to give a shout out to our American Canadian brother, shipmate.
That's true.
Will Boardman.
What's up, Boardman?
Love you, man.
You're the man.
He's a good friend of ours in the Navy, stationed in Greece and Iceland together.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
And lives in Guelph, Ontario, which is the fucking smack dab of this shit.
I haven't seen him in a long time, but he's a great guy. Shout out to Will. I'm pretty sure in the Navy he was a sober fella. So I'm with you now, my man. Always had a great taste in music. Great, one of the best conversationalists I think I've ever met in my entire life. Used to just love to talk, and I miss those conversations. So yeah, shout out to Will. Hope you're well and doing well. Anyway, So how do you want to end this, man? Do you got anything going on or anything you want to point people in the direction of?
Yeah, no, like everything, dude. There's so much material. It's hard to cover every single thing, every single battle, just there's a million things that I took notes on, and
It didn't even come up.
it didn't even come up. Yeah, I mean it's hard, dude. There's so much shit, and trying to squeeze it
Well,
into hour and a half, 2 hour episode, it's a lot. But
it's hard. I mean, again, I wrote out a thing and then I threw it away because I was like, no, there's it's kind of based on our conversation where I went. I mean, like you mentioned, there wasn't a lot that you knew about the South, so kind of went in that direction to lead up to the Battle of New Orleans. I wanted to hit on Brock. I wanted to hit on the fact that who the winners and losers was, and kind of be blunt about it. But it's an interesting war, and it's as Don Hickens in his book says, it's kind of the forgotten war, and I didn't know much about it. I mean, I knew Tchaikovsky had written a song about the War of 1812, but that's not even about our War of 1812. That's about the Russians versus the French. Anyway,
yeah, and I think
check
there's a
us out.
reason. I think there's a reason why that we don't really learn a whole lot about the War of 1812 as Americans, but going to our public schools, because there wasn't nothing really changed for us. As
Right.
I mean,
It's all fodder for leading up to the Civil War.
yeah. I mean, it was just there was obviously some big things that came out of the War of 1812, but overall, I mean, the United States and Great Britain, nothing really changed. Canada kind of held their own, and Native Americans got screwed like seems they always have. So it just kind of if you're asking me for my opinion, War of 1812 was kind of pointless.
Agreed. Pour one out for your Shawnee Chiefs. Like us on Facebook, like us on Instagram, instagram.com/zanzeezeepodcast. Email us episode suggestions like the episode tonight. This one goes out to you, Justin, as well as Will. And also, please like and subscribe to our YouTube. It's under the link in the description. Also, want to give a huge shout out. New Glassfield is literally the mixes are almost done. There's a song on the album. It was called You Are My Machine that was played in a little band called Middle Children of History that the man I'm talking to tonight played bass on at the time. It's got to be weird to hear that song 20 years later on an album that's about to come out with vocals.
Yeah, I mean, I listened to it, dude. It definitely just rips it rips a lot better than it did when we wrote, or where when we played it back in like 2004 or 3. And that other shit that you sent me, I gotta send it, or I gotta listen to that too, because
It's all good.
I love it when you push out music, man. You Glassfield and all your bands you've always been in. I love listening to it.
Thanks, man. You're one of my best friends and a brother to me. I love you. I love that we get to do this. One of my favorite things. What should we cover next time? What do you think off the top of your head?
Yeah, I don't know. You wanted to do that one with the Game of Thrones real life
Oh, the
shit.
Plantagenets?
Yeah, I mean, God, I started looking at that. That would take so long for me to get up to speed because I don't know shit about it. And then, I mean, but if we wanted to stick to, political characters or history, you could just like draw a name out of a hat or draw
That's true.
an event out of a hat. I I don't know how modern we want to get, but if we're covering wars, I would love to come into the 20th century. I would love to do World War II, World War One, even
Yeah,
Vietnam.
we could do a World War One series.
But there's so much, dude. There's so much.
I
don't know.
agree. We'll text about it.
Yeah.
But if you have a suggestion, zanzeezeepodcast@gmail.com. Hit us up. All right. That's been your episode. We will see you next week. We love you. Thank you for dealing with a little bit of a pause. I didn't do 2 episodes last week, but here you are, a big fat War of 1812 episode. We love you. Have a great one.